Your Creative Push, episode 56.
I would say that if you think you can, if you think you want to, then why not?
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Bill Carman. Bill has worked as a designer, illustrator, and art director at universities, ad agencies, publishers, and large corporations. Since graduating with a BFA in visual communication and illustration and an MFA in painting, he has always freelanced and exhibited with an ongoing national gallery representation in New York City, Las Vegas, New Orleans, and Los Angeles. Bill is currently a professor teaching illustration and drawing, and his new book, Imagery from the Bird's Home, The Art of Bill Carman, is currently available from Flesk Publications. Bill, thank you, first of all, for coming on the show today. Could you maybe tell us what I missed in that intro and give us a peek into your personal life?
Yeah, I guess my intro could be pretty long because I've been doing this for quite a while, been around for a while. But I live now in Boise, Idaho. I teach at Boise State, and so I'm sort of the illustration department there. And, I've taught in a couple of places. I grew up in California, in the Bay Area, went to school there, high school and junior college. I went away to school in Utah at Brigham Young University back when I was doing the church thing, and a really good school there, really good illustration program. And that to this day, it's gotten even better. It's got a, great reputation nationally. And, but then, eventually I went back and did an MFA in painting because I decided I wanted to teach. And then also, as I was doing my illustration, I was always doing my weird stuff on the side, and I think a lot of artists do that. They have their, I guess, as they establish their careers, they have their, the direction they go as far as, making money or their career or their business. But I don't know any illustrator that has that kind of a career that doesn't do their own little thing in the wee hours of the night when it's dark and nobody's looking. And so for me, that's the way it was. And eventually it just came about that, I worked hard enough and long enough that that weird thing sort of took over. And as I started teaching, it gave me, at least that income where you don't have to worry. Because I have a big family. I have 4 kids, dogs, a snake, a cat. I have this python roaming around my studio now, somewhere underneath all my boxes. And
oh my God.
And so, I've always needed a substantial income to, support the family. And, I got married very young. I guess I was about 25. I was still in school. And my upbringing, and, sort of suburban upbringing was, make sure you have a steady income. Make sure you have, benefits, insurance, and all that kind of a thing. And so doing the freelance thing was very hard for me. Because of that instability, that idea that the next job I have to chase and so forth. And so I did that, but I also always could get a job as a graphic designer or an art director. And so I had that income if I wanted to. Like I said, as time went along, I found teaching. And that's when things really changed for me, is when I had that sort of steady income and I had that creative kind of atmosphere every day, going in and talking to students and sharing and being with other people that wanted to do art. And it left me enough time that I could then pursue that sort of strange direction that I kind of am known for now. So I built my career very deliberately over time, knowing that when I got married young, that I would have to focus on the family and that my career, plans would be on hold, so to speak, until, time went along, kids got a little bit older, I had a little more time, but I made that choice very consciously. So I think, in the beginning, it's very important. I talk to my students about this, not just winging it as you make your plans, because, jumping into a family and thinking that you're going to have enough time to really build a career in illustration, which is hugely time consuming, I think it doesn't happen for many people. You have to put in the time, right?
Absolutely.
And so whether you choose to do it on the front end or spaced out throughout your career or, later on, has to be a conscious choice. So
Yeah, I think that for a lot of people listening, that is kind of the holdup, right? It's the idea that they have chosen, whether for family or for themselves, to pay the bills, a different path
Right.
that they have to take. The real struggle then is finding the way to build either that career or just that hobby for themselves. So what advice would you kind of give to those people to start to think about building their career or building their side hustle, as it were?
I guess the main thing is, well, there are two things, right? First of all, do you really want to do it? I think a lot of people I've run across, whether it's, as a teacher in school or whether at conferences or other places, that are starting or early on in their careers, they seem to be in love with the idea of being an illustrator or an artist. That it's like some sort of a magical lifestyle, or they're in love with that idea of being well known. I mean, and this happens, I guess, in a lot of careers. I hear so many kids, friends of my daughters themselves, they want to be famous, or they want to be known. And the idea that's just sort of backwards, but that's what our society is built, right? These people that are famous for nothing. They get famous for doing stupid things, being on Instagram, Snapchat, whatever it is. And they don't do anything, but they're famous and they get paid for it, And so for me, that's just really backwards. So the idea that you really want to do this, do you really want to make these pictures? Do you really want to tell stories? Do you really want to, sit down and be alone hour upon hour, working at your craft and getting better at it? And then do you have the skills or the personality to be able to put aside those hours that you have to put in? So wherever you have to find that time, you put in that time to get better. And again, for me, as it went along, there were little periods like late at night. I remember when I was in graduate school, I worked full time and I had my family. I had 3 kids at the time. And so I would have to work late at night, painting and drawing. And as a result, for a couple of years, I was averaging probably 5 hours of sleep a night, 6 hours of sleep a night. And so where do you find that time? You're serious enough that, I really want to carve out that time to get good, because that's the secret, right? I get that question a lot. How do I get good? What is the secret? What are your tools? What are you using? And this and that. And the secret is time. That's a terrible secret, right? I mean, time. Yeah. No, come on. What is the real secret? Well, it's time. You put in the time, you put in the work. So that would be, do you really want to do it? Are you, willing to do whatever you have to do to get there? And, how do you organize your time? How do you organize your life to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it too, by saying it's not a big secret. It is time. And we talk about it all the time on the show, but it's one of the hardest things to do, because it's a habit, You have to not only put the time in just once, like one day, be like, okay, I'm doing it, but like you have to make it a lifelong habit. But really, it's a binary thing. Like if people say like, I want to be an artist, well, you can be. It's a binary thing. It's you turn the switch on and you just do the work and you're an artist. You might not be the best artist and you might not be the artist that you're gonna be someday, but you are actively pursuing your dream of being an artist. And once you start doing it every day, yes, you're an artist.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And I believe that 100%, that, just like anything else, there are, I don't even want to call them levels, but there are different directions to go, or different places in the art world where, and it's expanded even more, where, you can fit in, and which is one of I think the greatest things that's happened is, of course, the internet, that we have, so many avenues available to us for not only just showing our work, but making money from it if we want to, on our own, or, whether it's hooked up with, a real professional career, or, selling your own work or whatever it is. But yeah, if you do it and decide you want to do it, then you can put that label on yourself. I am an artist. I'm doing it. I'm working hard at it. And over time, it can become a passion. And then you just really can't stop doing it. Then it gets to be that point where, with me, it's pretty obsessive.
Yeah. And it makes it not as hard to put in those hours and
No,
kind of
no.
sacrifice sleep for it too.
No, and for me, and I don't know, I'm sure it's the same way with a lot of people, there's really no other place I'd rather be than in my studio. And so, yeah, I love going off and doing things and going on my fishing trips and, spending time with the family here and there. But my favorite place to be is in my studio. And so, I don't know if that's normal or not, but it is for me.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's once you kind of, as you said, become comfortable with your own work and really develop a passion for it, it becomes like a sanctuary almost. It becomes like a place where you can actually be your true self, and, not necessarily who you are during your day job or who you have to kind of pretend to be. Like it's like where you can be your true self once you can kind of find the bravery to actually be your true self in your art.
Well, that's the key, right? You have to face yourself. And for me, I kind of like myself, and so
I like you too.
And so it's not a bad place to be, but it can, it can be scary too. Do you have anything to say to yourself or to anyone else? And I think that's a big thing also. That for me, it's not only about making pretty pictures and selling my work, but do I still have something to say that means anything? Facing up to that. So that means that am I filling myself up as well as letting all this stuff out? And I think you have to maintain that balance. And I say my favorite place is my studio, but it's not just about making art in my studio. It's about reading and writing and whatever else may go into it. But you really can do it. I think that, and again, particularly in our sort of society now, and all the things we have available to us, that you can find almost anything you want if you really want to do this thing, and if it means enough to you that you can. It's such a great thing to see that and see people. And how early some of them get started. I remember going online, it was a while ago, and it was somebody that actually sent me some work and said, "Would you look at my work? Would you, tell me how I'm doing?" And this work was beautiful. It was really good. I mean, it wasn't quite there as far as professional, but it was pretty darn close. And so I told this person, and I finally got around to talking, through email, and I found out that this person was, he was there 14 or 16, I can't remember. And I thought, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? So people are getting started earlier and earlier, younger and younger, because they have access to things online, and they can be that sort of, I don't want to use this word in a pejorative way, but that nerdy little person that doesn't maybe fit in, at school or whatever, but they can find this stuff and they can learn this stuff and develop an early passion for it. I just think it's the greatest thing. All the young artists that are out there right now that, inspire me.
Absolutely. And it's so easy to learn, and it's so easy to, if you're not getting the kind of education you need at your school, or maybe not quite as advanced of an education, that you can just find anything online. You can find, literally learn how to do anything. And it's pretty insane. And if you have a specific question as you're learning it, you just type that question into Google. And one, it's fun to see that other people are asking that as Google like predicts what you're going to ask. That's always like nice. You're like, okay, I'm not the only one that doesn't know how to do this. But every specific question you could ever have is usually been asked before and is up there, and an answer can be found. It's amazing and inspiring, the times that we live in.
Yeah, it is. It's a little scary, but that's okay. Yeah. Being scared is good, It's I got to say, it keeps me on my toes too. Seeing all these wonderful young people doing this great stuff, it keeps me excited about the whole thing. I guess some people get very discouraged by it. The old school people and things. This that, things are falling apart. Blah blah. It's always the old guys always say things are falling apart. But really, it's exciting, and we're building this whole new foundation, a whole new group of artists to take this thing into the future. And I couldn't be more excited about it.
Absolutely, it is very, very inspiring. Kind of going back to what you were saying before about sneaking off into the depths of your studio and kind of painting and doing art of the weird things that you kind of think about. How long did it take you to develop that kind of personal style, and where did that come from?
I think it was always there as you go along. I don't know that there's ever a moment, at least there wasn't for me. It's this gradual building, and the kinds of things that I read, the kinds of things that I looked at and was drawn to, that helped shape that, but it was always something that I fiddled around with since I remember being back in school and before I went to, college. I had a friend that we were in a band together. We did a lot of things together, and we drew together, and we, discovered artists like Roger Dean and Patrick Woodruff who did album covers. Eat a Peach was one of our favorite albums. It was Allman Brothers, and
nice.
It was illustrated, and there's a illustration in the middle of this fold out album, and we would look at that for hours and think, man, somebody's actually doing this. They're printing this, they've been probably a job or something, so we could really do this. But I got connected to that kind of I guess you could call it some, surreal in some ways, that kind of artwork very early on because of music. That part of me was always there. And even as I studied in school and did more mainstream stuff like graphic design and, mainstream illustration, that thing was always there. I had a teacher in the university. His name was James Christensen. If you don't know his work, you should look it up. It's magical. Yeah, he helped fuel that fire. When I found that he was teaching, I said, oh my gosh, this is sort of a kindred spirit. And he's a teacher and he's doing this. Wow. I mean, that just cemented it for me that it was there, for the doing if I wanted to do it. And so I kept doing my things, and I would always stay kind of situated in the mainstream, but my sketchbooks, all that my spare time was spent on finding this strange voice that was in me that I think was always there, but had to be uncovered as I built my skill. That's the thing I tell, anybody that asks, my students in particular, that, people call it a style or, and that voice is there to be found, but you also have to have the skill to realize it, right? Mm-hmm. And so life drawing for me in sketchbooks, drawing is the way, as you're maybe imitating other artists, looking at other artists, that married with your building your skills of seeing, thinking, and mark making, then your voice will come out naturally. If you push it too fast, too soon, and you just start copying, tutorials are one of those things that I worry about a lot, because I think because of them, we're seeing a proliferation of copycat digital artists. Somebody gets really good at it and you go, oh my gosh, that works great. They put out tutorials. You see a lot of copycats, basically. Mm-hmm. Very good, slick, very good, but they don't have a voice of their own. And I think, sticking too much to tutorials can lead to that. And so I said, feed yourself with other artists and feed yourself with other things and draw from life. That's one thing that's always kind of kept me connected. And I think that's really how if people ask me how I found my sort of unique voice was, I fill my head with this stuff, but it all comes out with my own unique sort of mark making because I, just kept drawing from life. So
I love the idea that, the voice is always there. It's like this thing that you kind of have to peel away, and the only way to peel it away is by putting in the time and letting yourself be you.
Yeah, you can't help that voice coming out. If you work at it, it'll come.
Right.
It's just your personality, just like anything else.
Are there any things that kind of hold you back today, or held you back before, from the daily act of doing the work, or has it always been pretty easy for you to get into the studio and to put in the time to do your personal work?
No, life, has been the main thing, right? And again,
right.
That's why you have to build your temperament. I think, that for me, I made decisions about, at this point in my life, this is going to come first, my family, this, and so that impatience to get there wasn't really there. I knew what I was building, and I knew that, okay, later on I would be able to get to that thing that I needed to. So, I'd say the only roadblocks were life. But I was I was psychologically prepared for those, maybe. Some people maybe aren't, and they push life aside and have to go for it. And, everybody's going to be different in the way they do it. But, for me, the only roadblocks were, I couldn't find the time to put in that I needed to, but I knew that would happen. So. And
then how are you able to kind of balance that? Do you have a formula for figuring that
out? Yeah, I wish I did. It was very erratic, my time in the studio, for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I had any formula. I just kind of carved out the time when I could.
Right.
That was, all was keeping a sketchbook was really important. because you can always, no matter what you're doing in a meeting, wherever you can break that out and draw. So that was the thing that kept me connected, I think. But if anybody knows that as a family, especially a large family, like I said, 4 kids, making plans is one thing, but sticking to those plans are almost impossible.
Yes,
they're just things just come up, and so I tried as much as I could to carve out time, but mainly I just knew that the time would come eventually. So
yeah, and that harkens back to my very first episode with Chris Riddell, who talks about the idea of the sketcher and the non-sketcher, and the sketcher is the person that carries this. It's as simple as carrying the sketchbook around with you and looking at the world in a different way, and always being ready to kind of draw, and knowing that that's like kind of an appendage that you have with you at all times, so that when you do get an idea, and it applies, I think, to any kind of creative type writers as well.
Absolutely.
You know that you can put those ideas down, and you get in the habit of, when you get an idea, being like, okay, and writing it down, and then that being permanently in your sketchbook. So
right. I
love that idea of, finding the time, whether it's in a meeting, hopefully it's not an important meeting, but, or, on the train, or, on a commute, just finding that time and putting your ideas down on paper.
Absolutely. The writer is a great analogy, because most writers you talk to, they always have their little notebook, right? They're always making notes. Photographers, even artists now, it's so much easier. We have our phone with us all the time, taking photographs here and there. Even if you can't sketch, using the phone as a tool. Wow.
Yeah.
There's so many tools we have now.
And so many apps that make it easier too to keep everything organized.
Absolutely, yeah.
Evernote's a great one. I don't know if you know that.
I just heard of it from somebody.
Yeah.
I think George Pratt, but I've never used it, but I'm going to have to look into it now. So
yeah, it makes it much easier. Before we get into our final push, I was wondering if you could tell us about your book.
Oh, yeah. This has been a great project. I mean, it was something that had been coming for a while, that I thought about for a while. Just a book of my work. And I wanted to do something that could be read visually and have its own visual sort of rhythm, not a tell-all, big end of the career kind of a thing, because I've got a lot of time left.
Good.
I just kept wanting to do this book, and I met John Fleskus, who's the head of Flesk Publishing, and now publishes Spectrum. He's a new publisher of Spectrum.
Oh, cool.
But we juried Spectrum years ago together. We met, hit it off really well, kept in touch over the years. And, eventually he'd been doing these, Kickstarter books. And I thought, well, maybe I could talk to him about that, how he does it and stuff. We got to chatting, and then over time he said, well, why don't we just do a book? Instead of doing Kickstarter, why don't we just do a book for you? Because Kickstarter works best, I think, if somebody's plugged into a big, huge crowd. He has connections with people who do comic books and things like that have another crowd other than just the artist crowd. And my crowd is pretty much the artists, and so it would be a smaller crowd. And so we just talked about it, and he said, yeah, let's do this. And the trade version is 192 pages, and the deluxe or the collector's edition is got 16 more pages of that and an alternative cover. And I'll sign it and put a sketch in it if you get it to me. But it's just, again, it's a book of my work for probably the last 10 years. And I ended up designing it myself, because I made the mistake in the beginning of, he said, well, what do you want the book to look like? So I gave him some ideas as far as layouts of the pages. And he said, God, it looks great, better than we could. Why don't you design it yourself? Which is actually really good for me, because I kind of wanted to do that. I had an experience with a children's book that I did with Random House, and I gave up sort of the design reins. And, it just didn't turn out as good as I wanted it to. So sort of made a pledge that the next time, I did a book, that I would try to do the design myself. I think it turned out really nice.
Very cool. I can't wait to get my copy of it.
If you can get it to me, and postage back, I'll put a sketch in and sign that stuff.
So cool. Very cool. All right, Bill, it is time for our final push. And
okay.
This is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of somebody you've really inspired today, somebody who hasn't done their work yet, or somebody who is currently doing their work, and really give them that push into, continuing their creative passions. Well,
first of all, I think that there's a creative part in everybody, and how it manifests itself is going to be, according to our own personalities and our environment and so forth. But if you choose to go in this direction, imagine this: there's nothing like a lifestyle of being able to get up in the morning, This is what I do. I make my coffee. I walk up the stairs, or I take the dogs out, and I, walk up the stairs to my studio, open the doors, and the sunlight pours in. And I just think, man, I get to spend the day doing exactly what I want to do. And people are paying me for this. And so, not only the idea that I get to tell stories, I get to draw pictures, I get to think and make marks, and I get paid for that. And the idea that this is just for the select few is just not right. Anybody that really wants to do this can do this in some way. And I love to be in the classroom, and I love to get excited about this. And I love my students when they start to get excited about it and see that sort of sparkle that, yeah, I can do this. Somebody has to do this stuff, right? Imagine, a lifestyle of you being able to draw pictures, not just for yourself, but, for a living. So I would say that if you think you can, if you think you want to, then why not? You can still live whatever other life you have, carve out more and more and more time. And if you get better at it and if you enjoy it, you carve out more time. I don't think there's a downside here, right?
I don't think so.
I cannot think of a downside that, in the beginning, you spend as much or as little time as you think that, this is what I want to do. And as that flame starts to burn, and if it starts to burn hotter and then that passion starts to develop, you make more and more time according to the passion, according to the desire. So it's not like you have to say, I got to put everything aside and I'm going to dive in 100% now and put everything else aside and be this, starving artist that does nothing but artwork. And, I suffer from art. You don't have to do that. There are so many hours in a day. You plan, well, I'm going to start off and do this for an hour a day, or whatever. I'm going to draw from life for a half an hour, and so take it in steps. And you also need to know that, yes, there are those talented few out there that start with a head start in anything, in athletics and music or whatever it is. There's always that person, oh my God, it comes to them so naturally, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. They have to put in the time like anybody else. Maybe their time is less, but you can't compare that way. I was never the most talented person in any of my classes or in school. There was always somebody better. Some of those people are doing art. Some of them are not at all. It's all about, what do I want to do? And building to that point. Nothing happens all at once. Build and see if that flame burns. And if it does, wow, there's nothing like I say, walking upstairs, sitting down at my table and drawing and painting.
I love it. And like you said, it doesn't have to be a painful experience.
No.
It can be as easy or as hard as you want to make it.
That suffering artist thing is just, Vincent van Gogh lived a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Bill, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. And you can find Bill on his website. That's billcarman.com, BILLCARMAN. And on Facebook and Instagram, he is Bill Carman Art. And you can find his book on Amazon.com, or you can find it at the show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Bill Carman. And again, that's Imagery from the Bird's Home, The Art of Bill Carman. Bill, thank you so much again for coming on the show, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, I love it. Had a lot of fun talking with Bill about creativity. Remember that strange, weird voice, that strange personality within you that wants to come out in your art. Let it out to play. And as Bill said, the way to find that personality, to find that voice, is having the skill to notice it, the skill to determine what that voice is trying to say. And the only way to get that skill is to put in the time every single day. And once you can tap into that and really develop your style that's uniquely you, that's when things get fun. And that's when it's easy to put the time in. And you kind of desperately need to put in that time, as Bill said, going off into the dark in the wee hours of the night and having to put the time in. The voice is there and it's ready to come out. It's just a matter of peeling away the layers and really getting to the core of it. On tomorrow's show, we have Michael Vash.
when I was over, like I said again, when I was over at Disney, there were people there they found their home. It was that was their thing, and and kudos to them. It was like perfect fit. For me, it wasn't. I was always like, I had kind of more of an entrepreneur side with the art side, so I always wanted to be running my own show. So having to go to a place that was very structured all the time didn't ever really work for me.
Michael's a very talented and hilarious artist who started his own greeting card company. So I had a really great time talking with him about what led him to create his own company and how he's able to implement his creativity into it and some of the struggles that come along with the business as well as being a creative person in general. But that is for you tomorrow. Hopefully today you were inspired to go and get your work done, so go and do it. It's as simple as putting the time in. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing, and we will be here for you tomorrow if you need the push again. Have a productive day, and I'll see you tomorrow.